event possible. Got a $75 donation from Sleepy CLG. Stumbled across AGDQ in the YouTube rabbit hole a few months ago and thought it was one of the greatest fundraisers I've ever seen. What a fantastic concept. We've all lost too many good people too soon, and we were lucky enough to have our mother win her battle. There are few victories as sweet as that. Shout out to my mom for being the warrior woman she is, and a special shout out to my friend Jack and everybody else currently fighting their own battles. Blessing and the love from Dennis, Ozzy, and Lauren too. $50 donation from Chaos Hirogashi. This is my third year watching AGDQ, and it's beautiful to be able to donate for a good cause while watching these games be destroyed by amazing people. Also to maintain tradition, kill the animals, save the frames, hype. Got a $100 donation from B. Charmander. Shoutouts to all the tech, staff, announcers, spectators, and of course runners who make this amazing event possible. I was homesick from work this week, so I got to see some of my favorite games broken to smithereens. Donating during one of my all-time favorites, Paper Mario, to help smash out cancer. Best of RNG to all runners. All right, guys, it's time for me to go, but I'm going to be throwing my torch back to Toggle Switch, who will be hosting. I am Edo Bean. Thank you so much for having me, and you guys have a wonderful week.
Hello everyone, my name is Toggle Switch. I will be your host for this block, starting with Blast Core. We have a $100 donation from Packet Overflow. My best friend lost his mother to cancer a few years back, and I've seen what it does to a family. Paper Mario is my all-time favorite Nintendo 64 game, so I had to donate. Keep fighting the good fight and save the cows. And a $75 donation from Anonymous. Watched the past 4 events you lovely people have put together and loved every bit of it. And this is the first one I've had money to donate. Love everything you guys are doing.
All right, Martin, can you hear us all right?
Hi, Kirk, how you doing, yeah?
I cannot hear Martin in my headset.
Yeah, we need...
Oh.
I can hear you in the corner of the room currently.
I'm not there.
I don't know. Martin, can you speak again? Martin, could you say something again so I can see if I can hear you? Okay.
Yeah, I thought I heard him, but the volume might have been low.
Can you hear me now, guys?
Yes, yes, we can.
I can hear you, but I can't see you. There we go.
There we go.
There we go, we're all on.
All right, so you can see us, you can see the game.
I can see you, I can see a bit of blastful going on, yeah.
Very nice.
Alrighty, so I'm going to start us off with commentary then. So, this is Blastcore, a 1997 game produced by Rare for the Nintendo 64. The runner today will be Graviton. I'm Kirk Q, I'll be leading the commentary. And on the line, we have Martin Wakely, who spent 8 years at Rare developing as the lead designer, actually, for Blastcore, Jet Force Gemini, and he also did work with Diddy Kong Racing. How's the weather in England today, Martin?
Pretty rubbish as ever, really.
Yeah, it's cold
raining.
here. It's cold here too. We've been in the hotel all week.
Yeah, your cold is different to our cold, so.
Sure thing. Yeah. All right. So Grav is going to be doing a 100% run of this game, which is basically knocking down all of the buildings, collecting all of the red RDUs on the ground, and beating all of the very difficult time trials. So whenever we're ready, we can get started with the time.
Okay. All right. We give a countdown here. We're good to go. All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, so going into the first level here, the first level is called Simeon Acres. Martin, so would you like to describe this red carrier driving through the level?
It's a bit functional to be fair. What we decided was Chris Stamper wanted to make a game where Chris Stamper, who owned and founded Rare, wanted to make a game where you knock down buildings, and we quickly worked out the buildings were quite static in their nature and didn't do a great deal. So to make the gameplay more exciting, we came up with what we originally termed a constantly moving object, which eventually became the carrier that you see now. So yeah, it was mainly something that required the player to knock down the buildings, otherwise there was no real gameplay thread to it.
Right, and you'll notice, so some of these buildings have arrows surrounding them. That's being described in these text boxes that Grav is skipping very quickly. The arrows mean the building is in the carrier path. However, since we're trying to 100% this game, Grav both knocked down all of the buildings and collected the RDUs while clearing the carrier path in this case. So these first few levels are the training levels. They introduced basically the first 4 vehicles, which in the first level we had the bulldozer, which they call the ramdozer. In this level we have sideswipe.
Show us what you've got.
And so, Martin, would you like to introduce the J-bomb here?
Yeah, that was one of the late. I can see there's some polygons missing underneath there. It's one of the later models we put in the game, actually. I mean, this is before we use things like motion capture and stuff like that. So that's one of our guys just hand animating him. But yeah, no, he was kind of. We were more confident with the 3D by this point, so we were kind of experimenting with the verticality of it. So you know, we knew you could fly off the ground and that kind of thing. I mean, it's worth remembering when we started, there wasn't really many. Well, I mean, there was no 3D games out there, so when we started making this, we didn't quite really understand how we could use it properly. And it probably wasn't until I went to the Shishinkai show in Japan in about '96 and saw Mario that we sort of like kind of went, oh yeah, that's a bit of a moment. We understand how we're supposed to use it now.
All right, so Grav is now driving the Backlash, probably the hardest vehicle to control in the game. You have to basically spin in a circle and get the back side of your vehicle to hit the building in order to knock it down. And as we enter this next level, this is the carrier level involving the Backlash. So normally what ends up happening for a casual player is you don't get a very good swipe on the building, and you kind of just sit and run into it for a little while.
There we go. Yeah, it's a very, very tricky vehicle. It takes quite a bit of getting used to, but once you master it, it's quite fun. I'm really happy that it's a strong difficulty curve because it's very rewarding once you master it.
It was based on the jump turn in Mario Kart on the SNES.
Oh, really?
So if you were a useful player at that, you should be able to pick it up straight away.
So it's kind of like driving Mario Kart backwards, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I got a lot of abuse for that, has to be said, over the years. So yeah, not popular with everyone.
And people aren't a fan of the difficult gameplay, that's for sure.
No, we were quite aggressive in how difficult we made it.
So, it's worth mentioning, on the first pass of this level, Grav actually met the platinum time for the level, which comes into effect later. Normally, the first pass through the level, you basically just clear the carrier path, and it says you've completed the level. And then later you figure out that you need to knock down all the buildings and get all the RDUs. But very much later in the game, you unlock time trial mode for all of the carrier levels. But the time trial times are actually recorded on the first time you beat the level. So Grav did get a platinum on the first level, or on this Argent Towers level, and now he's going back to 100% it.
And majority of levels that I play will be like this, where I enter them and try to get a platinum on the first try, and then I'll clean up the rest of it on the second pass. There are a few exceptions that we'll mention later, but for the most part, this is what I'll be doing.
So actually, Grav just got in the Ballista, which is kind of a bike that shoots missiles. He's got a certain amount of missiles shown on the left side of the screen there. So I did have a question for Martin. When you were designing these levels, did you design the carrier path first and the level around it, or did the level get designed in as a whole and the carrier path added to the level?
It was kind of mainly the former. We worked out what the key objects were going to be in the way of the path and how we actually physically create the levels. We were using a 3D tool called Ninja at the time. There was nothing around. It was something that was used by Boeing to make flight simulators. So, I mean, there's nothing like you get now where you can have things like Blender off the net for free. I mean, these were expensive high-end packages that Rare had got through Nintendo. So we modelled a basic sort of like city with the straight path in the 3D package, and then just, we kind of just tweaked it as we went through. So yeah, I mean, we had a vague idea, but we sort of like just saw how it played, changed it until we were happy with it, and then left it there.
And then, so it's worth noting, well, I'll talk about this right now. Right now, Grav is in a bonus level. Most of the main carrier levels have these things called communication dishes, which basically unlock bonus levels. And bonus levels are just sort of time trial or training type missions, which Grav has to get the platinum on to 100% their own.
I will mention that as good as I am at this game, these platinum times are so difficult that even I have a hard time getting them consistently, and I was only a half second away from missing that platinum there, so it just goes to show that even with all this practice, it's still pretty difficult.
Right, and so most of these courses, the race courses, have 4 laps. And Grav can kind of take the total time and divide it by 4 to figure out, what he needs per lap to get the platinum.
Yeah, the police car is the only race vehicle I currently have that can get platinum, I believe, but it is also one of the better vehicles to choose if I had unlocked all the vehicles anyway. So it's very good because it's fast, but also handles fairly well.
No trouble at all. I hope this works.
So I was curious about the soundtrack for this game because I find it really interesting how varied the soundtrack is. We kind of go from ambient themes to like more hard rock type themes and even like a country twangy kind of feel. So do you have any comments on that, Martin?
I would like to say that it was down to me, but really the guy who did the audio is Graham Norgate, who you might know. He worked on GoldenEye. He also was one of the founder members of Free Radical Design, and he still works with us at Crash Lab. So when you're working with someone like Graham, you don't go in and say, this is what I think the music should sound like. You ask him what he thinks the music should sound like. So, you know, we had a bit of fun with it. I've been very good friends with Graham since we started at Rare back in the day. And yeah, we kind of just, we didn't take it very seriously. So yeah, he kind of messed around really, and we put a lot of stuff in. But in terms of guidance from the development point of view, we were happy to let Graham go with what he felt like really. The banjo tune is always a favourite, and Graham will still say it was the first appearance of a banjo in a Rare game. So there we go.
It's definitely extremely unique, especially for the time.
Yeah, there was a kind of song in the charts at the time. I mean, it's not like Graham. When I first met Graham, he had a big black mohawk. He's a goth and into industrial and techno, so it's really not. I can't imagine that's the sort of music he's sitting listening to at home. And I guess at the time we were probably listening to bands like Rancid and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of, it doesn't really reflect our own musical tastes. But yeah, I mean, I guess at the time, used to games which had distinct environments and distinct tunes that went with it, so I guess that probably explains some of the variety.
Alright, so during that level, you'll notice that Grav was zooming out the camera. Basically, while the carrier is on the map, you have two main options with the camera. You can focus on your vehicle, or you can switch the camera over to the carrier and see if the carrier is about to run into a building. So, when Grav is blowing up buildings, buildings actually have random explosions. They can explode, green, red, 3 explosions, 5 explosions. It's kind of nuts how random it is. And it actually lags the game quite a bit as Grav blows up these buildings. So, by switching to carrier view, he takes the camera off the explosions, which can save a substantial amount of time.
The explosions are massive. I mean, they took up something like about 1/8 of the cartridge space.
Oh, wow.
Oh my god.
I mean, you've got to remember this is 8 meg, so you've probably sent an email today that's bigger than that. So yeah, they were uncompressed, so they didn't lag. Obviously, they do. So yeah, they were fully rendered, which at the time, was quite a big deal, really.
Well, you had mentioned that. So, when you were developing this, the Nintendo 64 wasn't, the hardware wasn't fully complete yet. So you were developing this on an emulator, right?
Yeah. I mean, I started at Rare and I worked on the first Donkey Kong game on the Game Boy, and then finished that in about September of '94. And then we started straight away on Blastcore, expecting the development kits to arrive, kind of like within the week. And I think we spent about a year waiting for them to arrive.
Oh, wow.
And we did some stuff on emulator. I'd like to say I was dead professional, but basically I spent the time playing all the games in the Rare video game library. So, we had a great year. But we waited for the kits to arrive. We did some work on emulators. We also, at the time, it's difficult to comprehend, but we were using, Nintendo had a deal with Silicon Graphics, who provided the graphics hardware for the N64, and we were using their proprietary machines, and they were like $250,000. And so we were making levels on that didn't really reflect what the game was going to be. So I think we finally got the kits not much, about I think it was 13 months back we took to make Blastcore till it was released.
So then my follow-up question is, you've been developing this on the emulator. The first time you boot it up on the cartridge, what's the first thing that goes wrong?
I mean, it was completely different. I mean, on the emulators, we didn't have things like textures, so it was just flat shaded polygons. I mean, it was so far off being an emulator that, it was, if there's a word that's not quite emulate, that's something that's a close approximation. I mean, it really just allowed us to mess about with the cameras and stuff like that. So, yeah, there wasn't any commonality at all between what we saw on the emulators and then what we actually got when we saw the N64 hardware. We've done a bit as well. Rare were making arcade games, so we were working a little bit on arcade hardware. So Killer Instinct was in the arcades at the time, but that was kind of a sprite-based game. So yeah, it was. The hardware was changed a lot, and again at the time there was nothing really that level of 3D out there. So
Yeah.
it was hard to get a grasp of what it was going to be like. I mean, I think if you look at the game now, you can totally see I came from. This was basically a two-dimensional isometric game that happened to have a 3D camera.
Right, and so is that kind of reflected in how the buildings are kind of like square and rectangular, and they're just kind of like built up into the air, and there's not, you know, that much texture, or like the vertical dimension of the building does not have much variance.
I think that's more to do with the fact that, you know, it makes me sound really old, but back in the day, I mean, again, there's more polygons in, like, we're doing games on the iPhone now, and there's more polygons in one scene than there is in the entire game in Blastcore. We're really limited in terms of frame rate, memory. So, I mean, these levels here probably have something like 2,000 polygons, and that literally would probably be like a shoe of the character in COD or something like that. You know, I mean, it is that different. So, yeah, I mean, if there's limits to what it is, it's purely done down to the hardware and what we could actually do at the time.
All right, so I am going to point out something that happened a minute ago. When Grav was in the level with the ballista, he did miss the platinum time, so he did have to redo the level. That was not intentional.
Yeah, there's actually clouds that spawn in the air above you, and it turns out those create a substantial amount of lag in the general just level throughout the time you spend in it. And I got very bad luck with how much time I lost with those, but unfortunately, it was better the second time through.
So here's a question I wanted to ask. So initially, or I guess as it applies to us as speedrunners, we look at this game and we reduce the game down to, okay, we really just need to get these buildings and these RDUs, the radiation detection units. But within the game, there's this mechanic of the survivors, which normally, as the game's concerned, you need to get survivors, buildings, and RDUs. But the survivors end up just being a subset of the buildings. So was there another plan for that?
No, not really. They were. It was mainly just to give a bit of breadth to the gameplay. But yeah, they are exactly that, a subset of the buildings. You're completely right. I mean, you could have survivors without buildings, but yeah, it was mainly just funny to have them running around, and you could try and run into them. So obviously we've got the hits on them, so you can't actually run into it. But yeah, I mean, I always like games like Mario with multiple objectives per level, and I think that was kind of the real thought process behind having it. Similarly, you can see now we're collecting the RDUs. I mean, it goes from, as a developer, I remember games from being skinny as a kid and wanting a game that I could play over and over again and have lots of different facets to play. And I think that was kind of one of the things we want to do. We can't change the price, how much it costs, but we can put little bits in that allow you to go back and play it and complete it and find that last player, that sort of thing. So yeah, it was important to us, just to have, it was important to us just to have some more elements to it that allowed you to go back and play the level again and again and look for stuff.
All right, so two things just happened. First of all, when Grav exited the level, he saw a green circle around the level, which normally if we 100% the level, that circle should be red, indicating that we got all the communication towers. But we did miss a communication tower, so we had to go back.
Yeah, I just kind of spaced out. It was my bad. Now we're all good, though. All right.
The second thing was, at the end of the level, Grav exited the J-bomb and basically stepped into the water. He kind of just glitched out of bounds. And by exiting the water, the game ends the level for him. If the carrier was on the map, the carrier would explode. But since there's no carrier in the second pass of the level, the stepping in the water just immediately ends the level and saves all of his progress.
Go for it.
And now Grav is driving in the Skyfall vehicle, It's a vehicle that has a boost meter, and it's intended to go off ramps and kind of land on buildings. Actually, any vehicle in this game, while it's in the air, it'll pretty much immediately destroy any buildings it touches. So you have things on these maps like bumps, ramps, things like that, that basically let you knock down the building in one try.
You're just trying to.
That was, I have to admit, that was really just reflect the fact that the hits were so rustic back in the day, that three-dimensional hits are quite processor intensive, so to stop any kind of like lag.
Right.
If the building was up in the air when there was a collision, so that we didn't have to do any complicated physics, we just did it so that any block would get destroyed. And so that's basically it. There wasn't any great thought process into it. It was just simply that yeah, really, it was just making sure you couldn't get a building lodged in a vehicle lodged in a building.
I've always found it kind of interesting how just like the limited resources of these older console games just produce kind of very interesting gameplay mechanics as a result. Like when you're designing these things, you have limitations which kind of produce a certain type of gameplay feel.
That's exactly it. That is exactly what we did. You know, really, you've got a small development team and you make the best that you can out of the game. And I'm sure, you know, when I was playing games as a kid, you know, you see it a lot now on modern games where people are making their own fun in games. We just kind of did that ourselves, where, you know, you watch all the stunts in GTA 5, that kind of thing. We were just saying, well, what can we do with this? Well, we found out that the hits don't work. Well, let's just exploit it then, and let's make some levels out of it. And that's pretty much how we did it. I've got Steve on the line with me now, who, or on the tech communicator, who did the multiplayer for GoldenEye, who works with us at Crash Lab, and he was pointing out the appalling hits on Blaster where you have to push objects around.
Oh yeah.
And again, just purely, I kind of exploited them and we made levels out of it, but basically because in terms of keeping the memory low and the processing power low, you've got two spheres that act, each object's got a sphere in it and the digger's got a sphere in it. And when you push them together, you can see that now, that's how the objects push around. And looking back on it, it was a bit harsh making what was a really difficult thing part of the game, but again, it was just to give us a bit more depth to some of the levels.
All right, so I will turn it over to the donation station here for a minute if you'd like to read a few comments.
No problem. We have $10 from Andrew12. I had to donate again after I saw that a Rare developer was on the line during the Blast Corps speedrun. Rare developed the best games on the N64, and they remain some of my favorite games to this day. I can't believe he worked on Jet Force Gemini. It's such a great game. What an honor to have Martin there to speak to. Huge props to the commentator as well. You're doing an excellent job. Thanks.
Thank you.
We have $20 from Jayford. I played so much Blast Corps as a kid. Love this game. Let's blast cancer to the moon. This goes to Runner's Choice.
I'll just kill the animals.
Save the frames.
I agree. I was obsessed. This is $10 from Benjamin. I was obsessed with Blast Corps as a kid, but I never managed to beat the train station carrier level. It's so cool to hear the dev commentary on this game. It's criminal how few people know about this gem. Good luck to Graviton to platinum it up. Donation to Happy Little Pikachus with Bob Ross.
All right, so I am going to interject here to point out the scientist mechanic. If you want to run to the credits of this game, you have to basically complete the main carrier levels and get 6 scientists. The scientists are kind of hid in like corner areas of carrier maps, and if you just beat the levels by themselves, it tells you basically you need to get these scientists in order to set up a controlled detonation. And then after you do that, you will get to the credits. So as we're doing everything else, destroying all the buildings, collecting all the RDUs, we do have to get the scientists as well in order to trigger the credits to unlock more levels.
Show us what you've got.
I hope this works.
All right, so you might notice that Grav is driving the wrong direction. So the way lap triggers work in this game is there's basically 4 quadrants of the map, and you basically just have to tag all 4 quadrants. So by driving backwards, actually, it's only maybe 1 to 2 seconds faster per lap for this course, but it does end up looking pretty silly.
I did not know that.
There will certainly be more where that came from.
Yeah, no, don't. I've seen Grab's work in the past. It's like finding everything that's wrong with our games.
We take great pride in doing that, actually.
Yeah,
Definitely.
You just got an awesome from Steve Ellis for that.
Nice.
I mean, that kind of shows again, you know, that's how we made games back in the day. But, you know, it's all little tricks like that to try and keep the processing down to as little as possible. So,
Exactly.
you know, there was no complex system of check boxes and which ways the character facing, stuff like that. It's like, well, okay. I mean, the programmer in charge, Richard Wilson, would have told me make sure that you can't get from one quadrant to another, but I obviously just ignored it.
Well, we're very thankful for that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to explain in this level. This level's called Beaten Tracks. Grav is going to get in the Ram Dozer, and he's going to execute a trick we call the Z trick, where basically in the original version of this game, if you hold Z to get out of your vehicle, after a few tries, you'll break any building in the way instantly. Normally, you'd have to go get a TNT to complete this level, which would take a while. You have to use that crane there as well to maneuver the TNT. But just by holding Z, the building just gets knocked down instantly.
No trouble at all.
So I wanted...
Cheap hits again. That's what it is. It's cheap hits. I mean, basically, yeah. it was the guy getting out into the building, and yeah, what we have to try and do is make sure the game doesn't crash or anything. So what we would have done is, if it gets in a situation where it feels it's an unresolvable situation where the driver can give a small amount of hits and the building's got a huge amount of hits, panic and destroy the building rather than crash, which is basically what we did. So.
I like to think of it as that, like, the guy's door is just made of titanium or something, and he just keeps slamming the door against the building until the building falls down.
You see that guy running around there? That is what the guy who animated it looks like when he runs. So that's pretty lifelike animation of the main driver right there.
Right. So we wanted to ask: does the driver in this game have a name?
No, the guy who made it is called Pete Levesque. So there you go. Maybe that should be his name. No, he doesn't. We were a bit light on things like that. We were kind of a bit more functional. We were very much didn't really worry about a story or write a story. We were more about gameplay. So no, he hasn't got a name actually. Or if he did, he'd probably not repeatable on what I'm reliably informed is a PG stream. So
Sure.
as you can sort of like probably sense, we didn't take ourselves very seriously when we did Blastcore. I mean, we were at the start. There was 3 of us, kids straight out of college. There was no grown-ups to look after us at Rare. We could do pretty much what we liked, and we did, and got into a lot of trouble about it. But you know, we just messed about really, and there was no one coming in saying this is what you should be doing. We just did what we felt was funny at the time, and yeah. There's loads of rubbishy in jokes, that kind of thing. It's all just, you know, us amusing ourselves really. So this guy here, Thunderfist, I'm sure you can see he's only got one arm.
Right.
Because we ran out of polygons. The model, we had a polygon limit, and he was the last model we did. He looks great. Obviously, Ricky Berrick did the models. Looks fantastic. But yeah, we literally ran out of poly, so we just chopped his arm off and put a little sparking bit at the bottom there.
It actually kind of gives the robot some character, I think.
Yeah. But again, just purely out of function, everything we did, but there was no real dramatic design-related decisions. It was more out of functionality.
Right. And one interesting thing about Thunderfist is, like, as he rolls, if his fist is in front of him, it will knock down the building. But if mid-roll his fist is behind him and you hit a building, it won't destroy the building. So it ends up that you have to be either relatively close or relatively far from the building when you start the roll in order to knock it down.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's probably because the hit point is actually in his fist, I guess, so it depends where you are on the roll rather than the actual... rather than the center of the character.
Right. So this is another level that Grav cannot get the platinum time on the first time. The reasoning is you have to drive this train. And during the time trials later in the run, the time trials do not count trains, blocks, or barges as requirements to complete the time trial. But during the first carrier pass, it is checking for that train. So Grav's going to 100% the level.
Probably have some more donations too if you have any.
All right. We have a $5 donation from Anonymous. Please tell the dev Blast Corps was one of my favorite games in the N64 era. They made a 12-year-old boy's dream game. We have a $10 donation from Best Earth. Wow, I remember this game from my childhood. Never really understood it, but it had explosions. Never beat it, but I can't wait to see what happens during the run. And we have a $20 donation from Bombada. Go Blast Corps, one of my favorite games. Beating the Platinum Medal is still one of my proudest gamer achievements. First time donation, I can't wait for what's next coming at AGDQ. Kudos to all the people making it happen. Good luck to Graviton for beating all Platinum and helping break down the cancer wall. And we have a $20 donation from Eric Hobbs. Blast Corps is one of my top 5 favorite games. Love to see it getting played. Time to get moving.
All right, so getting up to that pillar up there is actually very difficult. There's like just enough room between the ceiling and the pillar to fit the J-bomb up there. But if you don't fly at the correct angle, J-bomb will hit the ceiling and you'll just kind of fall down and you won't make it up the pillar. So if you watch someone casually try to make it up there, it'll probably take them 5 tries or so. So we wanted to ask, what kind of thesaurus did you need to get all of these promotion titles?
Yeah, the guy who worked on this is Lee Loveday. He's still at Rare now. He still does all of the manuals. So again, it won't surprise you we didn't take it particularly seriously. There's a lot of subtle digs at Donkey Kong in there as well. I don't know if you noticed, but like Simeon Acres, Gibbons Gate, Baboon Cascade. They're kind of all subtle references to parts of the anatomy of monkeys, which I think probably went under the radar for most people at Rare as well. But no, Lee's a really funny guy and he's incredibly bright. He does all of the comics and the website, stuff like that. Very dry sense of humour. He's got a first in English from university. So he was a guy I used to go to with my half-baked ideas and go, can you turn those into something that sounds good? And he used to do it. So yeah, a lot of them are kind of, there's references to rubbish British TV shows, like Lorraine Chase was an actress back in the 70s and one of the levels is called Moraine Chase. I mean, again, it's just terrible in-jokes, but that 5 people found funny.
Well, it's kind of interesting because like all of the levels, they kind of have a little bit of character to them, including the name. So like,
I hope this works.
here we're in Mika Park and you shoot down 17 buildings. Like, it's just, there's not another level that's too close to this.
No. Well, I mean, I think, again, it's not wanting to sort of like get misty-eyed about the old days, but this is a game that was made by the maximum number of people on the dev team was 7, and the majority of time there was 3 or 4 of us on it. And you get more of one person's ideas then. Like when I was working at Crytek, you had like hundreds and hundreds of people making a game. And it's just like, you're never going to get that kind of like reflection of the people's personality in it because it's just some large blob of a game that everyone works on and some producer in an ivory tower might have a vision for, but really it's, whereas this was just us sitting around having cups of tea going, yeah, that'd be funny, okay, let's go and do it. And that's kind of the reflection of what we did really. I mean, there was no problems with communication because we just sat around with our feet on the 250 grand kind of like machines from Nintendo and talked about what we thought might be worth doing in the game.
So this level Grav is in right now is called Salvage Wharf. He had a choice between 3 vehicles, including the Ram Dozer, the Ballista, and the Backlash. I have no idea why anyone would want to use the Backlash for that level. But the Ballista ends up being slightly faster than the Ram Dozer.
Yeah, the boat is worth quite a bit of the dollar count you're required to have to finish the level.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because that one, you know, it's really just, you know, knock down a set number of buildings, but it was wrapped as, you know, cause $1 million worth of damage.
Yeah.
Grav is going to do a couple tricks here. So he's driving the American Dream, the fastest car, but it has bad acceleration. He nudges into the wall here in order to knock down these buildings instantly. Normally it would take 10 or 20 times ramming into the building, but if Grav is touching a wall and touching a building at a very specific angle, again, it'll knock down the building instantly.
It's like, did you just reverse engineer how our hit code works? Found out the way to get around it.
Oh, we've got more coming later, for sure.
It's an unresolvable situation because the momentum's taking the car forward and there's not enough gap between the wall and the building, so, you know, it couldn't bounce off. So, yeah, we just did that panic, right, destroy the building. So, yeah, that's where it's from. I mean, we kind of knew this happened because when we were making it as a dev team, you never go through all the possibilities. Once it started getting in QA or testing, and people started noticing these things, so we, you know, a lot of the platinum times are done. Well, most platinum times are done using certain tricks. Not as many as you guys have found, but certain tricks.
But it's still interesting how, like, some of the levels literally encourage abusing the mechanics.
Yeah.
And so, what we did right here was really important. Grav watched that demo to a specific few frames and backed out of the demo, which stores the direction that was being held during the demo.
Well,
We're going to see that much later in the run.
You're just trying to.
that's another new one on me. Didn't know that.
So we've got a couple numbers off in memory that we're going to call back here in 20 or 30 minutes. Again, as these buildings blow up, they're extremely laggy, so Grav keeps switching to carrier view in order to minimize the lag, which it's worth noting that the timer actually runs down during the lag frames, so while the game lags, you could lose, you know, over the course of the level, multiple seconds from not having the camera switched.
Yeah, without that technique, it's actually impossible to get several of the platinum times in the first pass through the level, so it's very fortuitous that we have this to our disposal.
Did you want to read a few more donation comments?
Of course. I have $5 from Sean127. I'm loving this run, and I almost fangirled when I heard that a Rare developer is on commentary. Thank you to the runner, the developer, and the awesome donation announcer. By the way, let's kill those animals. We have $100 from Oma Wilkes. Glad to see Blastcore on AGDQ. Played it with a friend, and finally getting 100% was so rewarding. The $100 going to bringing back a Duke Nukem 3D speedrun for the Summer Games Done Quick 2016. Thanks to all involved. I also have $10 from Mizar15. Had to comment when we have the dev of Jet Force Gemini on the line. Does that mean we can expect to see a Jet Force Gemini run sometime?
Wow. That would take slightly longer.
Have you seen a Jet Force Gemini run before, Grav?
Yeah, it's actually really cool.
You should be, I think the QA could do it in about 3 hours, I think, with all the tribals in it. Sounds about right.
So how long did it take the QA team to 100% blast score then?
Do you know what? I genuinely think no one ever, I can explain this quite a long time, I don't think anyone on the QA team ever 100%'d it.
Oh, wow.
Because the platinum times, I could get about 5.
5, wow. Yeah, I mean, when I had this as a kid, I definitely did not get all the platinums. I want to say I got maybe half. And only when just revisiting it recently with a lot of us playing the game, I think a lot of us got the platinums.
So yeah, I mean, I couldn't get many of them. What happened was, it was again part of that fact that I wanted to give value for money for kids who had to shell out to buy a game. I didn't want it to finish in 3 hours and that'd be it. So all the time level stuff like that, it was just an excuse you could go back and play it and achieve something else on it. But it kind of caught on with, so we had a testing partner, Rare. We worked in an old barn from like the 15th century or something, and we had like a house, sort of like attic area where we had probably 10 guys testing the game, and they all liked Blasco. I got on really well with them. We had a good relationship, and they started setting the times, you know, that were the times and the goal times, and it got too aggressive with goal times because you couldn't get them. They were rock hard. So then the American testing at Nintendo of America came on board, and then the Japanese testing at what's it called, Mario Club, I think it's called. And it kind of got into being a bit of a competition, which I kind of worked out was quite a good thing, so it kept their interest. So we kind of stimulated that, and then we introduced the platinum times so that they could show off how good they were. So it was like, yeah, find your bugs for the day and then send through your best times. And so it got very competitive between the 3 continents as to who could get the fastest times. So I was putting in platinum times that I had no way of checking because I couldn't get them myself. I just had to trust our QA and Nintendo QA that they were doing the right thing. I mean, you know, again, talking about something like the games at Crytek, you know, the QA departments are massive. I mean, we're talking like 300 people, you know, doing a game. But at Rare, we had, you know, 10 people sitting in an attic of the room just playing through the game. That's you know, that's how bugs get out, I guess, is the fact that there just wasn't the volume of people playing it, and the number of hours that's been put into it since is quite staggering.
Yeah, I mean, most of the information we've gathered for this game has just been, like, we all know each other online, and we essentially share ideas between each other, post videos. Hey, I found something weird that happened. Hey, can I do anything faster with this? Like, we want to make glitches like this happen.
Yeah. There we go.
But again, it speaks to what you were saying before, that, like, anytime there's an unresolvable situation, you know, your solution there is to kind of eject the RAM dozer out of the condition that's jamming it into the wall.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So it's actually kind of, you know, it's cool that it actually, the game can allow that instead of just crashing.
I mean, I say you've got to remember it's so difficult kind of trying to contextualize it because we'd come from a background. I mean, I was making games when I was at school, and they were all 2D on the SNES or, you know, home computers. And the whole kind of like the collision routines there, they're all done in 2 dimensions, so it was quite easy. Whereas this, you know, suddenly you've got mass, velocity, you know, you've got all these kind of things, which it was just a complete new world. And like, we were right at the front of doing this, you know, we were the first generation of N64 games.
Right. I was going to say, we'll get to mass velocity later for sure, so look forward to that.
Yeah. Well, I probably wouldn't be the right person to ask him. I've got Steve on the line. I'll ask him. But yeah, no, I mean that's it. I mean, it was, you know, dealing with physics. You know, now you would get a dedicated physics team working on a game like COD or GTA. There would be multiple people working out, you know, the friction on tyres, that kind of thing. This is just like one guy out of college going, hopefully that'll work. I mean, it's so different what it is now. I say, and we had no one at Rare we could ask because the GoldenEye was working at the same time. So there was us and GoldenEye in a little barn on our own where we used to just, again, mess about, obviously. And yeah, we were the only ones doing the 3D stuff because Killer Instinct was on the go, but it was pretty much a 2D sprite game. Stuff like Banjo hadn't been started by that point.
So I did want to ask, these games that came out at that time, you mentioned GoldenEye, I'm going to mention Diddy Kong Racing as well. These all kind of have one thing in common, that they have pretty difficult time trial times. So was it that a lot of the people were shared between the development teams, or more so just that was a general idea at Rare at the time, was to produce this difficult endgame content involving time trials?
I think it's a bit of both, but I think games just generally were harder. You know, there's 2 schools of gaming, which is the Japanese gaming environment where through persistence you can survive, and then there's the American school where the best times win. You know, and there's no kind of, and we were kind of like stuck in between because we worked very closely with Nintendo Japan and very closely with Nintendo of America, but also games generally were much harder. You know, I mean, there was, you know, a school of thought where, like, stuff like looking at the Backlash now, you know, I liked the fact it was hard to use. You know, good. You know, that was it. But now I'd never make a game with something that difficult as one of the main characters because people wouldn't be bothered to play it. They would immediately turn off the game. You know, people like kind of generic bland stuff, which is fine. That's great, and they're the games that are most successful. So yeah, I mean, I think we had a very good QA department at Rare, and they set a lot of the times. So they would have been the people on Diddy Kong and stuff like that, time trial. They'd have played it over and over, and they'd come in with a new time, and we would have set it based on that.
All right. So I am going to interrupt. As we jam through the bridge here, we execute a trick called the Street Shark, where basically by tilting the backlash at a specific angle and jamming into a wall, the backlash goes about twice as fast as normal. So normally during that level, you have to drive a giant U-turn around the level to get in front of the carrier. But Grav basically just goes over the bridge and knocks down the buildings.
That was always a problem. Polygons that were close together, you could get inside and outside. So imagine there's a big sphere around that truck, and you are partly in, partly out of that. You know, like that sphere is completely covering that bridge support, which would have been the problem. So, you know, a lot of the bridges, for instance, don't really have any polygonal hits on them. They have a big box put around them to stop you doing stuff like that. But obviously, they can see it falling through the level again there.
So interestingly, Grav, so in order to execute that, because the angle is so specific at which you'd have to hold in order to do that, Grav actually used the D-pad for that because the D-pad is a very static joystick angle. It's just like 99 or 127 left or something like that. And so basically Grav just started the level, he held A and then waited for the specific time at which to press left on the D-pad, and it happens every time. Some of the stuff he did when he was up in the bridge is a little harder to execute.
When we made the game, or when I designed the game, did it using the D-pad, the 3D stick, I had no concept of what that would be used for. I didn't get it at all, and then it was only when I played Mario 64 that I went, oh right, that's what it's for. And so Nintendo kind of like, we reverse engineered putting the support for the analog stick in there. Really, it was not how the game was intended to be played. And we went through lots of iterations of the control system. Mr. Miyamoto was involved in the decisions on how it should be implemented, that kind of thing. So yeah, it went right to the top in terms of how we should make this playable with the 3D stick.
Well, it's kind of interesting because the D-pad generally gets neglected on Nintendo 64 games because, like, you either have to be holding it such that you're using the D-pad or your left hand is on the joystick. You can't really use both the D-pad and the joystick.
No, you can't, no.
Try this for
It was a bit of it was a halfway house from Nintendo. If they were brave, they would not use the D-pad on the joystick, but I think they felt it was for people like me who feared change. It was too much of a to get rid of. I mean, realistically, hardly anyone used the D-pad, but some of the early implementations, I could get myself in trouble there. Early implementations of the Nintendo 64 joypad featured joypads that you may have seen on other gaming systems with this analog stick glued in the middle of them. It was hilarious. So,
oh wow!
Yeah, I mean, we were getting this stuff from Japan. What is this? Yeah, and until the whole analog nature it seems ridiculous now that I wouldn't get it, but at the time, left was left, right was right. There was no accelerate using a stick. I mean, that just didn't exist at the time. So.
All right, so Grav is doing, basically, I think Martin took all the hard levels and shoved them over here on the right side of the map in this hexagon.
Oh, wow. They're all hard. It's all relative.
Yeah, it should be noted that I'm actually getting all of these communication dishes on the way. For most of these levels, I can get them while I also get the platinum medal, and it unlocks the next level in the chain.
So there's 6 levels to complete here. So a lot of these bonus levels, was this kind of planned from the start of development, or did you just kind of have more time and want to make more content as the game was being completed?
It was making the most of what resources we had. So I've always felt a responsibility to give the best value for money for someone who's going to fork out that sort of money, because I knew what it meant to me when I bought games. You know, like when you buy a game, like my favourite games at the time, but so obviously was SNES stuff like, you know, Super Mario World, Mario Kart, Street Fighter, that you could play over and over and over and over again, and you never got bored of. So it always meant something to me. So whatever we had in the game, whatever resources we had, we would just use to the maximum. I mean, it annoyed me when we released Jet Force Gemini, because we had lazy reviewers go, oh, there's too much content in it. And it's like, well, yeah, it's not for you. It's not for someone who's got 3 hours to get a copy deadline in to review it. It's for that kid who's got £50 or $50 to spend on a game and wants to still be playing it in 6 months' time, because that's the only game he's going to buy this year. And that meant a lot to me. And when you see people going, oh, it's too big, it's like, well, don't play it then. I'm not forcing you. I'm not coming around your house and making you play this game. You know, so all these things are really just to give a bit. The Nintendo approach is 40% of the game should be completable by anyone. And that's where the credits come. If you look at Mario, and that's the model we use, and it's exactly right. You know, it's all this sort of stuff. If you didn't want to play it, you didn't really have to. So it was just mainly just exploit as much of the core mechanics as possible to make us in as different ways. So I mean, there were tons of stuff we probably rejected and tried out, but it was quite quick to try these things out. I mean, looking back on some of these, they were a bit harsh. Quite difficult.
All right, I would like to interject here because we're coming up on a very important trick here in just a second. The name for this trick is called the Chaos Recliner. So Grav is going to enter into his standing animation here, his idle animation, and as he walks, his hitbox goes through the ground and destroys the beacon, I believe it's called.
Oops. There we go. I'm prone to failing this level under pressure, so I'm glad I did not.
I'm trying to think of the total hours. We had at Rare, we had stored the total number of hours that was tested on Blast Score, and it probably wasn't huge. I mean, I think they found 2,000 bugs, which at the time was phenomenal. I mean, when we did Diddy Kong Racing, it was not Diddy Kong Racing, Mickey Speedway, which is the one no one ever talks about, but I like that game, by the way. We did that, I think we finished that with about 350 bugs. But I remember Blast Score having about 2,000 bugs, and we were like, oh, wow, that's just like, you know, and it was the first 3D game. 2,000 bugs seemed like this huge amount, but again now, hundreds of thousands of bugs in the database for a game these days.
So worth noting on this level Grav's on currently, he pretty much can't touch anything except the objects he has to kill. In my opinion, it's probably one of the hardest levels in the game to finish.
That's what I'm saying. I was probably pleased with myself when I did this as well.
Try this for size.
Go for
So Grav has to go back into the level to get the communication dish. It's really far off to the side here, so he didn't have time to get it and get the platinum. And so since that last level was so hard, no one ever probably saw this level. That's probably safe to assume. But, so I think I've seen this game before somewhere else. Martin, what was the inspiration for this level?
I completely made it up. I'm just a genius. No, the thing is, it comes back to what I was saying before. We were just some kids who were just messing about making games. So I nicked completely the Pac-Man maze, 100%, and we had ghosts that went round. And then someone in legal went, what you doing? We're like, hey, it's funny. And they're like, no, it's not funny, we're going to get sued. So, yeah, we were like, and then we just went through this iterative process of a lawyer looking at it going, you're still going to get sued. We had power pills in, and they got taken out because there is a pattern for the pursuer-aggressee relationship in Pac-Man. There you go. That's a fact right there. I don't think I've ever spoken about that before, but yeah. So power pills where someone's chasing you and then you eat your power pill and you chase them, that is trademarked by Namco. There you go. So yeah, no, so yeah, again, we just thought it'd be funny, but I was informed it wasn't funny. Let's just take it out.
So
Yeah, it was the exact maze. You could go in one side, go out the other from Pac-Man. It was, yeah, it wasn't exactly, but wasn't exactly well hidden, put it that way. But I didn't know at the time that would be a thing. You know, I thought parody would be, we'd be able to get away with it. Again, bits like this were all about getting the verticality because at the time there was nothing that had huge drops in a game that looked different to something like that. You know, all the games were 2D up to this point, so it was really important to try and make something as high as possible so you could fall off.
So as you're doing things in these, well, first I want to mention one thing. Grav is trying to 100% this run on a time limit. So he wants to get everything done before the carrier reaches the end of the level. He clears the carrier path, but as the carrier reaches the end of the level will end. And if he doesn't have 100% completed, he'll have to go back in. So he's trying to do that really quickly. But what I wanted to ask that I just thought of, when the character animations come up, they have kind of sayings like, try something else, or what's
I hope this works.
Yeah, I hope this works. And so I wanted to ask, like, how do you get the voice graphic? Wow, stumbling over my words here. How do you get these voice effects? How do you record those and get those onto the Nintendo 64 back in 1997?
Well, so what we had to do, God, this really is going back in the day. So we tried to do it ourselves. So that's Graham Norgate doing the Homer Simpson impression when you can't get out. So don't. But obviously, we tried to do voices for the main characters, but English people doing American accents always, like me, always sounds terrible. So we had to go through a process of. We got our colleagues at Americas, people like Ken Lard at the time, who's now at Microsoft, who's an absolute gaming legend. He was the guy I dealt with every day at Nintendo. And he took it into his department and we said, okay, here's a brief script, here's some sound bites we want. Can you go and find someone who sounds like Mr. T? You know, that's literally what we did, because we just, again, we didn't take it seriously. And then what would happen is they would send us a DAT tapes of physical media in the post. 2 weeks later, would turn up with a load of people shouting in the studio. And we'd be like, that's not Mr. T, that's just someone shouting. And then they would do it again. And yeah, we just used it that way. And again, we took the opportunity to try and get them to say as many risque things that we thought we could get away with as possible. And some things got lost in translation, so came through, and like things that would be deemed to be obscene in England but weren't in America, we would get the Americans to say it because we thought it was funny. we would put them in and then get swiftly told to take them out again. So, I mean, the amount of time wasted on just doing pointless things like that was, but it was quite, I mean, at the time it was important for us to be quite inclusive. Like, I know it's quite a controversial topic, but we made sure we had male, female characters, people of mixed ethnicities, that kind of thing. It was important to us to do that in the game because I felt, games as a media was an important thing to do. So even back in 1996, it was something that was key to what we were doing as well. So yeah, but mainly, the voices, it wasn't like it is now where you could basically have some high speed internet connection where you can probably just stream the voice and record it there and then.
All right, so Grav is using the van for this course, which he just unlocked in the last level. He's basically trying to hold right on a specific frame here, and we'll see what happens when he gets it correct. All right, so we're inside the level now, driving around the 4 quadrants, and our laps take about 3 seconds.
Wow.
So that was 12.2. I don't know what the platinum is for that level, but it's probably, 45 seconds or so.
Yeah, it's like 40 or 50 seconds. It's actually one of the more difficult platinums to get, even for someone as skilled as I am. It's very, very tight. So I'm glad that clip exists. It actually makes it easier for me.
All right, so now we're going to try the same thing here.
You can do this.
Wow.
us what you've got.
You can do this.
All right.
Yeah, there's no invisible walls guarding me driving up this cliff inside, because why would I be inside of this level for any reasons?
There is a thing which we always used to talk about, the director's cut of a game, where sort of like probably about 2 weeks before you go into submission, where it's probably a lot longer now with modern games, but you had a game where all the tricks were still in it, and then basically you go through and you take off a lot of the exploits out of the game. Obviously, clearly we didn't take out all the exploits from the game. But yeah, no, there was probably a version that was a bit more rough around the edges. That was a couple of weeks prior to what we released. That was probably more fun in a lot of ways, but you could probably break it. So, yeah, if it causes a crash or something like that, that's the worst thing a hardware manufacturer can do, is release a game with a crash in it. Obviously, I'm talking about back in when you had to physically make a cartridge. So, now if there's a problem, day one patch,
Right.
everything works up to day one patch and day two patch and all the other nonsense that goes with it. But here, if we messed it up, then it costs something like $17 to make the actual physically manufacture the cartridge. So that was the cost to Nintendo. So if we messed it up, they were massively in the hole. So you had to make sure it was all playable. So yeah, you put in all the fail safes to make sure the game didn't crash, didn't wipe any save data, that sort of thing. But with the Z trick as well, you can there are different production runs, you can release different versions of the game, whereas as soon as it went online, then you couldn't, because all the versions had to match up so you could play multiplayer games. Whereas here, there are, we would be in the process of finishing the game for about a week with no sleep, and you would go into production with one version of the game and do a limited production run, and then get a better version a couple of days later, then do the majority with that, and then maybe fix up some bugs for the final production run. So there would often be multiple versions of the game out in the wild.
All right, so the vehicle Grav's in right now is actually called the Cyclone Suit. I believe this is the only level we're going to see it in. It does cartwheels and lags the game.
You know what that is? Look at that motion blur, that'd be why that is.
Oh, that's really interesting. I've never looked at
Yeah, the
close to
blur,
that.
it's really cool.
So motion blur, what we did, again, it was all new, so it's basically creating a sprite of the character and overlaying it multiple times.
All right, so this is probably the hardest level in the game for a casual player. You take the backlash and you have to knock down about just 50 or 60 segments of building in a row here. Grav is only clearing the first building of these two because he's going to use these gas plants up ahead. The gas plants kind of blow up like a TNT, and they will destroy various buildings within range of them. So as he passes this building, he's going to walk up here, destroy the gas plants, and that building he just passed is just gone. Just got knocked down. So there's another trick here. It's called the PB&J, of peanut butter and jelly. Named such because the player who created it was literally eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with one hand and playing the game with the other as he was nudging and knocking these buildings down. So Grav, as he kind of tilts in towards the track there, you can do the whole course like that, and it makes it substantially easier if you know what you're doing. And then at the end of this level, we have this giant skyscraper with multiple pieces. It's actually faster to knock it down with the TNT than it is to use the Z trick on it most of the time.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning, this is the only level in the game that I can actually get 100% and also get platinum in the first pass. It's kind of unique in that aspect. It's probably because the platinum time was made so long, because this level was so difficult for casual players. It's kind of why I have so much buffer time to work with.
Yeah.
So this is Oyster Harbor. This is kind of an interesting level because there's a lot of tasks for you to do. A lot of the level is figuring out what it wants you to do. So first you're supposed to take the ram dozer and load a TNT onto this crane and then drop the TNT onto this structure in order to destroy the structure. But since we have the Z-Trick available to us, we're just going to Z-Trick the building down.
I'm just going to clear these crates out while I'm over here. I have nothing better to do here. Okay.
And then after he passes this structure, which has 4 or 5 pieces, he has to push some blocks into a hole. Now, interestingly enough, they made it so that if you take the nearest blocks and put them in the nearest holes, you will not be able to beat the level. You will be short on blocks to beat the level. So what you have to do here is you have to take one of the diamond blocks and trade 1 block for 2 blocks in order to beat the level. So you push the 1 diamond block in here, and then you go across, and oh, there's 2 diamond blocks, so now I can actually beat the level.
Those hits don't get any better with time.
And Grav's going to use this ramp here to destroy the power plant. It launches him just a little bit up into the air, which lets him basically kill the building in 1 hit instead of having to do 2 or 3 passes.
Oh, missed a piece.
So normally for this last section, you have to take the first barge very far to the left side of the map in order to pick up a TNT. But again, since we have the Z-Trick available to us, Grav still does have to move the barges in the correct position. But after the barges are in the correct position, the final building, which normally takes the TNT, which you'd be pushing the TNT across all 3 barges at that point. Instead of using the TNT, we're just going to Z-Trick the final building.
It's worth mentioning, too, that normally in levels that I have to move barges and trains, it's impossible to get the platinum, but because I save so much time with these Z-Tricks, it actually makes up for that, and I'm still able to get platinum despite having to move all these boats and trains in the way and stuff, or the concrete in the boats.
You're just trying to impress me.
So we probably have time for a couple donation comments.
Yeah.
All right. I have $100 from Mashugun. I just had to donate during Blast Corps. It was surely the most nerve-wracking game I had on my N64 growing up. Great to hear commentary from an original developer. Mad respect for Rare for making some of our favorite games of all time. Cheers. Oh, and kill the animals.
So this boat is a building, as far as the game's concerned. Normally you'd want to go over to the left there with the ballista to destroy a specific building over there, but we're going to find a more exciting way to do that. So normally these buildings, we can't see them just yet.
There we go.
There they are. Those buildings are shot by the ballista, and then you get out of the ram dozer and climb up the ramp with just the green player character. But that's probably no fun, so we'll use the other way.
It gets better, don't worry.
Yeah, this one gets kind of crazy. So Grav is going to place the ram dozer in a very specific spot. He's going to drive the barge up to this building, which we haven't destroyed yet. He's going to press the acceleration button 1 frame at a time in order to lodge himself into and through the building.
No way.
At which point he Z-tricks the building because it is a building. Using this, you can actually drive the boat like out of bounds, essentially.
No way, get out of it.
So one more thing here. Grav is going to place the boat as far to the left as possible in the legal parking position. So as he does that, we're over here to get the scientist, which is really hidden. But because the boat is parked so far to the left, we can walk onto the front of the boat and walk in the water, which immediately ends the level, saving the progress.
If the carrier was there, it would actually explode the carrier, but because it's not, it just ends the level, which saves the time I would have to take to travel back to the truck. It's quite convenient.
I think we even did a version to try and appease the lawyers with diggers with Pac-Man ghost eyes on, and they made us take those out as well.
That's certainly a shame.
Yeah, there's actually people who have hacked the ROMs to uncover assets that were not used in the game, and they've found those Pac-Dozer eyes, and
Nice.
it's actually very interesting.
Did they find anything else?
Oh, there's actually quite a bit. If you go to tcrf.org and go to the Blast Corps site, there's actually all kinds of assets uncovered there, and so everyone's kind of figured out all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Oh no!
Yeah. If you miss one RDU in this entire level, it's kind of it's the end. It's very tight.
Yeah, the movements here are very scripted, such that each bulldozer, each enemy bulldozer, turns towards you to take the shortest path possible towards you. So if we take the same movement every time, the bulldozers should turn in the same direction. But slight differences in movement can cause them to turn different directions. And there's actually one point later in the course where we'll stop for just a second in order to force the blue bulldozer to turn earlier, or rather not turn, I believe, so that he's not in our way later. And it's worth noting that these RDU hitboxes are very, I don't want to say inconsistent, but they're unreliable, I would say. Depending on the RDU, they all kind of have different behaviors, like which direction they're facing and kind of how close you have to get to it with which vehicle in order to trigger it. And I don't know if Martin has any comments on that because it's kind of specific.
I imagine the RDUs will be consistent, but it's probably the vehicles that changes. It's
That makes sense.
But also, and it's probably, as you found out, we didn't really do too much with frame rate. So as you found out, if the clock's attached to the frame rate, which is always a no-no now, but at the time we didn't know that. So yeah, it's probably a combination of frame rate and the individual diggers' hitboxes, I would guess. But I mean, the RDUs for me were just basically Mario coins. That's how I perceived them. So yeah, they were a collectible to collect.
I've never really thought of it like that. So we're in Angel City. All of these buildings are very difficult to knock down, even with correct hits with the backlash. Some of them take 2 hits.
Yeah, there's some conveniently placed bumps that you can use to destroy some of these tough buildings using the mechanic that, anytime you're in midair, you destroy buildings. It's very useful.
I think that was I think Simeon Acres and Angel City were the first 2 levels we did as demos. That was the first, so it probably would explain why it got easier over time, but yeah, that would have been why. It was quite hard.
That's kind of interesting. So after you had all of the levels developed, did you kind of then arrange them on the map according to difficulty? Like, was that kind of up in the air?
No, we changed them all the time. That's the thing, we're not one of those people who wrote some story and they had to try and shoehorn the gameplay in around the story. I couldn't care less about the story, so it was mainly just put the levels in and put them in an order where they fitted and where, some difficult bits, some other bits. Maybe you had to learn a technique to unlock another level, so there was probably a few dependencies. But no, there wasn't any sort of like planning in terms of narrative. It was all purely to do with gameplay.
Well, the narrative specifically, I don't know if we exactly pointed this out earlier, so I'll emphasize it again in case we didn't. The narrative specifically is basically there's this nuclear missile carrier, and the autopilot is taken over, and the carrier is driving in a straight line. So that's the reason, it's literally just driving across the world, and we have to knock down all the buildings in the way. And that's, sufficient for the gameplay. For sure.
Well, basically, Paul Lee Loveday, I just basically said, well, here's how the game works. Knock yourself out, come up with a story. So we did. We must have heard stories about the, do you know, Ribena? It's a blackcurrant drink we have in the UK, and someone had a nice beige colour carpet. We didn't want to spill it on the carpet. You know, we just made up all sorts of nonsense. But obviously, it does turn out to be the plot to the Sandra Bullock film Speed in the end, which we didn't plan at the time.
Yeah, but that bus could turn. We haven't found a way to make this carrier turn yet,
No, it's
unfortunately.
interesting because everyone kept saying, "Oh, it's really dull. You want to make the carrier turn." And I said, "No, that's the point. It needs to be predictable." So I basically, even internally, I had a lot of arguments about that because people thought that, "Oh no, well, it would be really dull if the carrier doesn't move." And it's like, well, as soon as you break that standard gameplay rule that the carrier keeps going in a straight line, then you have to explain why it's moving, where is it moving, what's it doing. So there was 2 rules. There was you can't knock down trees, and the carrier always goes in a straight line. And it's just like something that, but it needs to be, because it was a game that there wasn't anything like, you need to have something you can get hold of straight away and understand. And if we'd have changed either, if there were certain trees you could knock down, maybe you could knock down bushes, you know, that sort of thing, it would have just made it impossible to do. And if the carrier changed direction, you would have constantly had to keep going back to the carrier and saying, oh, it's changing direction now, it's moving now.
So it's worth noting that as Grav completes this level, he's using the ballista, and there's not very many missiles in this level. So he's actually going to do a couple passes to 100% this level. There is a cyclone suit in the building at the beginning of the level, but it's so laggy that it's actually worthwhile to go back into the level a second time with the ballista to knock down the rest of the buildings.
There was, in the things that we didn't quite get to do, what I really wanted to, I remember now about Survivors, we wanted to do a choplifter style game where you used the helicopter to fly around and pick them up in the end. But that's one of the things we absolutely ran out of time for. Probably the only thing we ran out of time for, to be honest.
So it would have been like a section after the level in order to pick them up?
When you finished, they would all still been on, and you went round and just winched them down and picked them up.
So this is another interesting level. The goal of this level is collect all the RDUs, similar to the Pac-Man levels, but this one has buildings on it. So I just really enjoy how, like, we took the mechanics and we had, you know, destroy buildings, destroy rafts, destroy a certain amount of money, or, you know, collect RDUs while knocking down buildings, and also races. It's just, the gameplay is so varied, it's interesting.
It's varied, but it fits within the mechanics of the game. And when people go talk about, you know, my ideal game design, it normally involves multiple different game types. So yeah, it should be like a first-person shooter, then a racer. But what we did was basically say, well, what have we got? What can we make out of the building blocks we've got for the game? And that's where we came from. So it's very efficient in that way. None of this is, apart from really the checkpoint system for the races, that's probably about the only unique part for any of the mini games. As we found out, that didn't work very well, did it?
It serves its purpose.
Yeah.
Show us what you've got.
So that level Grav just did is very difficult. He got the platinum by, I believe, 0.4 seconds.
Yep. That's a very good run.
And he has to go back in and get the communication dish to get to the level Scaries.
Scaries is the name of the town in Ireland where the artist came from. There you go.
Interesting. Also interesting is...
Oh no. Grav, why were you driving into the wall?
I don't know. I'm a madman.
Oh wow. Don't think that's supposed to happen.
So I think my favorite description of that glitch is, it's so old and so easy that it was posted on Game FAQs back in 2003.
Is it actually supposed to be a invisible tunnel through the wall? That looks so bad, that looks like.
You're a good salesman, Martin.
Yeah, good salesman for my own laziness. No, the thing was, I mean, because again, the shortcuts were essential because I loved them on Mario Kart. on Mario Kart SNES, and it's probably before your guys' time, but they had a feather trick where you could take a shortcut on one of the ghost tracks, and I just wasted so many days of my life trying to perfect times doing that. Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely, pixel perfect, or jumps and to do stuff like that. So we did put a lot of shortcuts in, but the trouble with a shortcut in a race game is once you know it, it becomes the route.
Yeah.
So once you've got it, all the times and everything have to depend on. So I'd be trying to set the times going, well, let's imagine you didn't know the shortcut was there. And everyone's like, well, we do know the shortcut. So it's like, yeah. So it just becomes then there's a long way to do the course and a short way. So it's quite difficult to balance that sort of thing.
All right, we're going to get pretty busy here in a second. As Grav is going to complete the any percent of this level and then 100%. I will turn it over for like 2 donation comments. Can't go much over that.
All right. I have a $50 donation from Goose. Seeing a lot of love for this game from the runner, the commentator, and Martin. I also have a $50 donation from Wobble60. Blast Corps is one of my favorite games. Loving the run, loving the dev talk, and can't wait to see Grav tackle those planets. Yes, if you're still playing Falco, hope you're still playing Falco. Great commentary.
I do still play Falco in Super Smash Bros. You caught me. So this is the last carrier level, and this is the last scientist we're getting right here. So 6 scientists, all the carrier levels. We will now trigger the credits after this level completes. Grav is going to wrap up the final 100% of this level. And we do have some very specific stuff coming up here in just a second that I'll describe. Okay, so as I said before, as Grav exits this level, we're going to go into the credits. The credits consist of a demo level with the carrier. Normally, the credits play out over about 90 seconds as the carrier drives to its detonation site. Recall earlier how we stored the direction held by the Thunderfist demo? The green player character spawns in this demo map. He begins walking in the direction we held earlier during the Thunderfist demo. His destination is a small tile of water, and even though the credits are just beginning, as Martin Wakely's name appears on screen, the character will reach the tile of water and the carrier...
That's unbelievable.
The carrier explodes, skipping the remainder of the credits.
Right. That looks a little bit like I made that happen by just getting to my name, doesn't it?
I was actually going to call you out on that, but you caught me.
No, that's not the case.
So, and making up the story from this point on, thus Grav covered the land in nuclear waste for centuries to come.
Yeah.
We do have a few more levels here. We completed the credits, and now we are going to basically go into space. Martin, do you want to describe kind of how this fit in with the rest of the game?
It's not going to surprise you. There's a bit of a theme here. It was just made what we could do with what we had, and there was a value on the gravity on all the vehicles.
Literally gravity.
Yeah, no, that was literally it. Each one. So it wasn't even matter, it was just gravity. So if you turned it down, I know maybe it was on a level by level setting, but if you turned it down, everything floated around, and it just seemed quite fun. So yeah, we did that. I mean, we were short of stuff to do by this stage, so yeah, we just we just fell upon it by messing about with some of the values in the digger control mechanics.
Well, it's actually very interesting. The moon level, which comes up next, the graphics are just crazy, and you're driving the backlash, and it's extremely hard to control, and just makes for a really great gameplay.
Because people say, "Oh, you can turn in the air," and it's like, "Oh, shut up! You know, you're on the moon. Stop moaning about it." So it's not a documentary at this stage. But I mean, I think that's where some people get hung up on things. It's like, is it fun? Yes. Do we do it? Yes. Fine. Oh, but it doesn't fit with the story. Yeah. Well, whatever. So yeah, I mean, there were some complaints about it, but to be honest, by this stage, the people who like the executives, that sort of thing, they're never going to play a game this fast. You pretty much get away with what you like by this stage.
So this is the only level in the game. There's no blast core truck in this level, so Grav can't exit the level. The shuttle is on a timer, and Grav destroyed all the buildings. The platinum time during the first pass was recorded as Grav destroyed the last building, so he did get a platinum on this level, but we still do have to wait for the space shuttle to land.
See, when I designed this, it was supposed to be some tense nail biting, waiting for the shuttle just to clear in the last thing. It doesn't quite give that impression now, does it? It looks a bit sedate and slow. Wow.
So we created a runway from scratch for the shuttle, and miraculously, the shuttle completes its return. And the story just kind of goes over the top at this point.
Yeah. It was never under the top, but yeah. No.
Yeah.
You're just trying to impress me.
That was the receptionist at Nintendo of America who did that voice. There we go.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? That's very interesting. We're gonna get like one of these per level at this rate.
Yeah, because I've completed all the levels and like gotten gold medals all at once, I kind of loaded all the cutscenes into one spot when you're normally supposed to encounter some of these, you know, in different spots.
Yeah, normally you kind of like, okay, I beat all the carrier levels, I got the credits. Okay, now I'm going to go back and 100% all the buildings. Now I'm going to do this shuttle clear. Now I'm on the moon with ridiculous gravity. And I just want to watch Grav destroy these buildings for a second. Because this part here is so difficult, it's insane.
Yeah.
Almost perfect. I'll give you a 9 out of 10.
That was pretty
good.
That was pretty good.
So one interesting thing to note is Grav is using what we like to call inflection point turning. At a very specific point, your momentum will be in either the clockwise or the counterclockwise direction, and as you tilt towards the other direction, there's a very precise moment when you can flip your momentum in the opposite direction and kind of create an inflection point where the ramdozer starts spinning in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that was going to be the sequel. Was going to be an 18 style sequence. That's what that's referenced to there. It says they might come back as some sort of military thing, but not enough people bought the game, so we never did a sequel. There you go. The realities of life right there.
They're all missing out, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right.
So yeah, again, we got to the moon. We got all the golds, and now that's going to unlock 4 more planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Neptune.
Yep.
One interesting thing worth noting, we'll see it here in a second. Well, rather, probably not see it. The planets actually rotate around the sun in a scaled-down, realistic view. So Mercury, if you sit on the Mercury screen long enough, after 30 seconds or a minute, the sun will rotate around Mercury. By the time you get out to Neptune, you sit there for about 2.5 hours, and the sun will rotate around.
Yeah. The guy who did it, Graham Smith, he didn't tell anyone at the time. I only found out after the game was released. Probably because, right, so we just said, yeah, but it was completely accurate, yeah. And yeah, it was he just decided not to tell anyone, but just put it in anyway.
I always found the juxtaposition of the accuracy of those orbits and the craziness of the gameplay on these planets was quite humorous to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think right there you can tell the bits I did and the bits the other people did.
Yeah.
Some of them are sensible and serious.
So yeah, I need to face the camera out from the center here. There's quite a bit of lag if I have the camera facing towards the middle. A lot of these planet missions have a substantial amount of lag, but I have ways to reduce that.
So next we're going to Venus, where we have the backlash, and this level is just so hard.
See, these levels are all vertex lit, or vertex shaded, which we didn't do on Blastcore, but most N64 games did. Again, we were one of the pioneers, so we wanted to try and make it look as rendered as possible. So levels like this, it was just a grayscale texture that had vertex colours applied. So you can see where the polygon joins are, because you can see the little patches of dark green there.
Basically, if Grav doesn't line up the back of his vehicle against these structures appropriately, he's just going to bounce off and stop. So the fact that he doesn't stop means he's executing extremely well here. Here's the inflection point.
That was amazing. It's very good.
Could you teach me how to play like this sometime?
Someday.
$49, wow. All right, this is where gravity and physics kind of just get lost.
I need to restart the level really quick to set this up.
Try this for size.
I hope this works.
Same.
So because Grav is hitting so many ramps, the physics are just kind of going to go out the window at this point.
I'm a little bit off.
Try this
Had to
for size.
retry.
I hope this works.
It's very, very precise. There we go. I hit the bump there just barely,
Show
kind
us
of.
what you've got.
As you can imagine, it was a lot more effective when we had ghosts on
Yeah.
Diggins.
Try this for size.
Yeah, the ghosts on this planet are definitely out there for sure.
As well, at the time, we were obsessed with shiny metallic textures. Like, so yeah, I mean, anything like that, that was like cutting edge
There we
back in 1995, whenever we started, or 96. Anything with an environment mapped in the background, it just looked amazing.
Get up there.
Yeah, I'm supposed to get a little boost up to this one, but I'll have to get a backup strat. There we go.
And because we're using the ridiculous momentum, he's got plenty of time to get the platinum
Yeah,
there.
it's like 2 minutes.
The record on that level is, what did you say, 16?
16.6. Yeah, it's
Wow.
insane.
Yeah, playing normally, you'd be lucky to get under a minute. Very lucky.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning there's quite a bit of people who dedicate their time to optimizing the individual level time attack, including myself. But there's also several players in Japan who have their own community as well, playing Blastozer. And so we've all kind of worked together to improve our times, both in the full speedrun and in the individual levels. And we've found a whole bunch of strategies because of it to increase our
Like,
improve
there's
our
actually a
time.
strategy in Neptune here to get out of bounds, but it's pretty inconsistent, so
Yeah.
we're not looking to use it here. We just want the platinum and want to get out of here.
God, I just reminded me, I remember one of the early testing reports which came from Nintendo Japan, that they got some guy to write down his experience and failed Angel City 103 times.
Oh my goodness.
And they kept him making it, and he was saying, at this point I feel sad, and at this point, and it's just like, oh man, because I kept saying, no, it's fine, it's not too difficult, but they made me read this report, and I was like, oh, okay, all right. We'll make it a bit easier then. But yeah, no, yes, it's quite, it's amazing how some people, I say the game was, the carrier levels were originally much more difficult than they are in the final game. The platinums are way, your times are miles ahead of anything we do.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because, like, I think a casual player can probably get to the credits in this game after, you know, a decent amount of time, but platinums are just out the window.
Yeah, I mean that exactly was the point really, and it's not something we invented. It's Mr. Miyamoto. You know, Mario 64, you can finish it, you know, with a small amount of levels, and that's kind of how they work out it should be. So.
Okay, so Neptune was the last level. We have 3 carrier levels. Well, worth noting, we just unlocked Time Trial by completing Neptune. Time Trial for the carrier levels specifically. So it's going to tally up what we did so far. 19 golds or platinums, 1 bronze, and it should be 2 levels that we did not medal on. So now do it faster. So we're back in the first level of the speedrun. This time through, because it's a time trial, we can get a boost at the beginning.
And I missed it.
Which he missed, but that's probably okay.
Yeah, it should be fine.
The other reason is that he doesn't have to enter the carrier at the end of the level in order to trigger the level end. So those 2 facts together should give him enough time to get the platinum there.
Just trying to impress me.
Back over to Echo Marshes. We had to, we don't need to move the train or the barge this time. So as we're wrapping this up, I'll ask one more question. It would be probably ideal if you could keep it a little short, but is there anything you would go back and change about this game if you could go back and do it again?
Not really, no, I don't think so. If I was going to release it on the rare replay, I'd probably have done a better job and worked on hits a bit more, because it's weird on rare replay because it's clearly a, you know, how many years it is, nearly 20-year-old game. So, yeah, I wasn't massively impressed when it got released and it still had some of the flaws. But yeah, at the time, it's a reflection of the size of the dev team and where we were with the technology. So no, I think it's fine how it is.
Show us what you've got.
I hope this works.
Yeah, and I think that really does summarize it. It's a reflection of the technology at the time and what you were able to do with it.
And the people who made it as well. It
Yeah,
is
definitely.
very, you know, it really is just, you know, it's embarrassing looking at some of the things, you know. Like the end of the game where you finish it and it says you can stop now. I just thought that was funny.
I thought you never got to that part.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, but because I thought, well, if anyone does it, and I thought that
Right.
genuinely funny. I've had like death threats and that over the internet. So, you know, well. So yeah, I think that's it. Have you seen there's a cow in one of those buildings? You know that? Have you heard about Super Secret Bovine Bonus?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Right, okay, so there was going to be a Super Secret Bovine Bonus, which we didn't reach. But yeah, in one of the barns on Simeon Acres, if you get the camera right, you can see there's a rubbish drawing of a cow that I did sticking out of one of the doors.
I might have to go look for that later.
So, yeah, it was going to be the Super Secret Bovine Bonus, and really we just thought that was a cool name, and we never decided what the Super Secret Bovine Bonus was actually going to be. So we just came up with a name and said, yeah, let's do that, and then just didn't do anything with it, obviously. But.
All right, that's amazing. But so this is the last level, and fortunately, Grav messed it up because I have time to explain what's about to happen. Because we're going to get the last gold on the time trial and unlock platinum at the same time, the world map will either have all the platinums and be done, or we'll get a cutscene that tells us we need to get all the platinums. If everything has been executed perfectly up to this point, we'll be on the world map and the time will be stopped. Otherwise, we'll get a cutscene. So, time.
And for those who don't believe me, you can see here at the bottom, you can stop now. 57.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up here, Grav's going to show off just one quick thing. And I do want to thank Martin for coming and hanging out with us here. I learned a lot about the game. I think the viewers learned a lot about the game as well.
No problem. Thank you for having me, guys.
Show us what you
And so
for it.
you mentioned earlier that you've been working developing mobile games at Crash Lab. So if after we're done here, I go back to my phone, what game should I go download?
You should probably go and download Crack Attacks. It's free because that's what people like these days. We've also done Snowman and the Snowdog game, which is a very big franchise over in the UK, which is about a snowman and his snow dog. And we also made a game called Twist Pilot, which is similar to some GBA games, but I'll let you be the judge of which ones they are. But at Crash Lab, I work with Steve Ellis, who is the guy who was managing director of Free Radical Design for 10 years, doing the Time Splitter series, and also was the guy who wrote the multiplayer on GoldenEye when we met at Rare. And also Graham Norgate, who did the audio at Rare and Free Radical Design as well. So, yeah, we are old people still making games, basically. It does happen. I thought it was like Logan's Run. I thought we'd just be eliminated by the time we turned 30, but there you go.
Well, it's just awesome that you've been doing it for so long.
Yeah, I think I speak for everyone when we say we really appreciate it, and I think it's a huge part of our childhood, these games, and it really means a lot, I think, to me and so many other people.
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say.
Yeah, and just like thanks for like you got an email from a random guy on the internet asking you to come commentate his run, and I just want to thank you so much for taking a chance with us and hanging out with us here today.
You're welcome. No, you're absolutely welcome. It's all for a good cause, and I'm glad to see everyone's donating so much. And yeah, it's fantastic. So congratulations to the organisers as well. Very worthwhile cause.
All right, that's Blast Score, everybody. Thank you for watching.
No problem. Cheers, guys.
Thank you so much for those run, guys. Next up is Star Fox 64. Real quick, as a reminder, AGDQ 2016's live stream is powered by Twitch. Twitch has been the exclusive platform to watch games done quick and a lot of other great speedrunning content since 2011. Make sure to follow the channels for all the amazing speedrunners displaying their skill at this event. All right, and just real quick here, we're going to go to a commercial, so I'll see you in just a minute. Welcome back, everyone. All right, we have a $100 donation from Lord Dethington. Blastcore is one of those games I've always wanted to play but never did. The speedrun might just be close enough. $102.45 from Ellipsis. Graviton, it took me a few months to get 6 platinum medals, so I want you to know that I hate you. Just kidding. What I really hate is cancer. Please put this money towards saving the Yoshis in the AGDQ 2017 Mario Maker run. It'll be a thing. $50 from Lockdown 2341. This is my first year watching and donating to AGDQ. I don't normally like speedrunning, but you guys made it fun. Blast Corps is awesome, and what you guys are doing for charity is awesome. Cheers to you all from Canada. $20 from Dave Cap. Blast Corps has been my #1 all-time favorite game since I first caught a glimpse of it at the end of a Nintendo Power VHS tape. Now I'm a lead game designer with a Blast Corps spiritual successor as my eventual goal if Rare doesn't get to it first. $1 donated for every year this game has been my favorite. Martin, you are my hero, and listening to these development stories is a dream come true. Thank you, AGQ, for making this happen, and keep up the amazing run. Hylas donated $50. This run has been amazing, and the dev commentary is such an unexpected bonus. Huge shout out to the guys who created this gem. Thank you also to everyone who's contributed to AGDQ 2016. I'm happy to donate to such a great cause and to help make sure those animals get what's coming to them.